Welcome to the Daily Views on September 12th in 2021. Let's start in London in the United Kingdom. Despite sharp criticism, Cressida Dick remains the head of the London Police. Her contract has been extended by 2 years to 2024, as Interior Minister Priti Patel announced on Friday. Activists and relatives of victims of police violence had recently accused Dick in an open letter of facing a culture of incompetence and cover-up. The police were also criticized when hundreds of people caused chaos at the final of the European Football Championship in London, and many spectators entered the stadium without a ticket. In March, Dick rejected calls for resignation after officials cracked down on protesters at a memorial service for a woman allegedly murdered by a police officer. Minister Patel, on the other hand, praised Dick's contract extension as offering continuity and stability. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan also supported the move. Previously, the organization of the London Police had backed Dick. The 60-year-old has been in office since 2017. And now let's go to Tel Aviv in Israel. Less than a week after 6 militant Palestinian prisoners escaped from an Israeli maximum security prison, just imagine that, media reports say that 4 of them were caught. 2 of the men were arrested on Friday evening in the northern city of Nazareth, not far from the prison, as reported by the internet portal Ynet, citing a police spokeswoman. According to this, a local resident alerted the security forces after the men asked for food. Just hours later, according to Haaretz, 2 more prisoners were caught, including the former Palestinian leader Zakaria Zubeidi, who was hunted by Israel's security apparatus during the second Palestinian uprising, the so-called Intifada, but was granted a temporary amnesty in 2007. The news of the arrest of the fugitives immediately triggered demonstrations in the West Bank, as the newspaper Times of Israel reported. Palestinian militant organizations had hailed the prisoners' escape as a huge success and a humiliation for Israel. According to media reports, the prisoner who fled through a tunnel from Gilboa prison on Monday night had been convicted of fatal attacks on Israelis. Police forces, the domestic secret service Shin Bet, and special forces of the army are involved in the intensive search for them, it said. According to a report by the Jerusalem Post, a total of 200 roadblocks were set up. In addition, the army arrested and interrogated several relatives of the refugees. And now let's go to New York in the United States. UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez has submitted proposals for improving the United Nations and international cooperation. He said, "Our world is approaching a new abnormal state, more chaotic, insecure, and dangerous for all of us." He said it when he presented the report Our Common Agenda to journalists in New York on Friday. And he said, "We are moving in the wrong direction and we are at a key moment. The choices we make now could lead us on the path to breakdown and permanent crisis, or to a breakthrough and a greener, safer world." In the report, Gutierrez proposes, among other things, a global futures summit in 2 years' time, at which topics such as climate protection and peacekeeping should be discussed. In addition, there should be a new reaction system for crises at the UN, as well as a special representative who keeps the interests of future generations in mind. And now, let's go to Yakutsk in Russia. In the historically largest forest and wildfires in Russia, an area half the size of Germany has been destroyed. According to estimates by the environmental organization Greenpeace, more than 17.6 million hectares of forest and steppe have been burned across the country in the past few months. This broke the negative record from 2012, which had around 16 million hectares destroyed. Greenpeace claims that it relies on publicly available data from space surveillance, and recently complained that those satellite data were no longer available to the Ford Protection Authority. They said, "The situation is therefore difficult to assess," said Grigory Kuksin from Greenpeace to the German press agency in Moscow. According to the Russian environmental activist, there is no end in sight. Currently, there are more frequent fires in fields and in steppe areas in the south. In the forest they have become less, also because the first snow has fallen in some places. In the summer months, forest and wildfires occur again and again in Russia, also in the taiga forest belt, which is important for the global climate. Most recently, President Vladimir Putin described the extent as unprecedented. And now let's go back to the USA, to Dallas, in Texas and Dallas. The first digital smiley will be auctioned in the USA. The auction house Heritage Auctions in Dallas, Texas, announced that the emoji will be auctioned online until September 23rd. Computer scientist Scott Fahlman from the University of Pittsburgh first suggested the combination of the characters we all know for use in this context on September 19th in 1982. It's now considered by many to be the forefather of the digital smiley. The starting bid for the so-called NFT, which contains Fahlman's original notice and an online university notice board, is $1,000 according to Heritage Auctions. An NFT, non-fungible token, is a type of digital certificate of authenticity. There can be a number of identical copies of them, but only this one can be considered the original. And now let's go to Dalian in China. The explosion of a leaky gas tank in an apartment in the North Chinese port city of Dalian killed 8 people. 5 others were injured, the state media reported on Saturday. A fire also broke out after the explosion at the apartment in Pulandian district, which was extinguished in the early hours of Saturday morning. The injured were all treated in the hospital and were reportedly in a stable condition. Investigations into the cause of the accident were started, it was said. And now let's go to Augsburg in Germany. According to division boss Thomas Schäfer, the Volkswagen subsidiary Skoda cannot build 100,000 cars this year due to a lack of semiconductors. The lack of chips hurts enormously, also because the demand for our cars is still very high, said Schäfer to the Augsburger Allgemeine Zeitung, a German newspaper. He hopes that the situation will ease somewhat in the coming weeks after more semiconductors could be produced again in Malaysia. The chip crisis will drag on into the coming year, but hopefully not as strong as in 2021, said Schäfer. Like many other manufacturers, the Volkswagen Group, whose subsidiary Skoda built around 940,000 vehicles in 2020, is struggling with a lack of electronic components. The reason for this, for example, is increased corona numbers in production countries such as Malaysia. In addition, due to the crisis last year, semiconductor manufacturers switched to companies from the entertainment, electronics, or IT sectors. And we just stay in Germany for a moment and just go to Frankfurt. 2 weeks before the federal election on September 26, many Hessian cities are reporting record participation in postal votes. Never before have so many such applications been recorded in a federal election, said the head of the Frankfurt Citizens Office, Oliver Becker, to the German press agency. So far, almost 150,000 postal voting documents have been issued just in the metropolis, twice as many as the same time before the 2017 election. The number also doubled in Gießen. 4 years ago, the postal voter rate in the central Hessian university town was almost 30%. There are many reasons for this enormous development, said Becker. On the one hand, the corona pandemic is still going on. And in addition, the number of postal voters has risen steadily in earlier elections. A new record was set in the local elections last spring. And in the city of Fulda in the east of the country, a share of up to 45% is expected. Since experience has shown that voter turnout in the Bundestag election, that's the federal election, is higher than in local elections, the absolute number of postal voters can be assumed to be a new record, said the city. In the state capital Wiesbaden too, the trend is moving away from the polling station. More than 61,000 people have already registered to vote by mail. In 2017, there were a total of almost 45,000 applications, a rate of 30.9%. A similar picture in Kassel, another city. Almost 41,000 postal voting applications have been received so far. In 2017, there were a total of around 30,000. Most postal voters take their time before they cast their votes. In Fulda, for example, every fourth postal ballot has been returned so far. In Kassel, the proportion is 35%, and in Wiesbaden, 43%. And because I have to work for you on the election Sunday as well, and I'm quite busy with appointments as well, I already have voted via mail as well. So it's quite common here in the, I was talking about Hesse, and now I'm talking about North Rhine-Westphalia, where I live, and it's quite common here as well, also in my hometown, Münster. We have quite a rising rate of postal votings here again as well. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.